Daniel was the kind of man everyone trusted. He was young, hardworking, and always carried a gentle smile. People in his neighborhood often said he was too good for this world. He worked in a small repair shop where he fixed watches, radios, and sometimes even old clocks. His hands were always busy, but his heart was always calm. Emily, his wife, was the sunshine of his life. She was kind, soft-spoken, and filled their small home with warmth. Together, they looked like a perfect couple. They did not have much money, but they had love, laughter, and respect. That was enough for them. Neighbors admired them, saying, "If only all marriages were like theirs." Every morning, Emily prepared Daniel's breakfast with care. She would smile as he adjusted his tie in front of the mirror. He was not a rich man, but he always dressed neatly. On this morning, everything seemed normal. The tea was warm, the bread was fresh, and Daniel kissed Emily on the forehead before leaving for work. But fate had written something different for that day. As Daniel walked down the quiet street, he noticed a police car parked at the corner. At first, he thought nothing of it. Police cars were not unusual. But then, suddenly, two officers stepped out and started walking toward him. Their faces were stern, their eyes sharp. "Are you Daniel Miller?" one of them asked in a strict voice. "Yes, officer," Daniel replied politely. He even smiled, thinking they might need his help fixing something. But before he could ask anything, the officers grabbed his arms firmly. "You are under arrest," the second officer declared coldly. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "Arrest? But, what have I done?" His voice trembled with shock. They did not answer. Instead, they pushed him toward the car. Daniel looked around, confused, hoping someone would speak for him. But the street was empty. Back at home, Emily was watering the small plants near the window when she saw the scene. Her hands froze. She dropped the watering can and rushed outside, her heart pounding. "Wait! What are you doing? Why are you taking my husband?" she screamed, running after the officers. The police ignored her. Daniel tried to calm her down, shouting, "Emily, it's a mistake. I don't know what's happening." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She ran beside the car as they pushed Daniel inside. She begged the officers, "He hasn't done anything. He's a good man, everyone knows that. Please listen." But the car door slammed shut, silencing her cries. The sound of the engine starting was like thunder in Emily's ears. She pounded on the window, but the car drove away, leaving her standing in the middle of the road, shaking and helpless. Her neighbors slowly gathered, whispering to each other. Some gasped in disbelief, others simply shook their heads. Nobody understood why Daniel was being arrested. Emily's legs felt weak. She dropped to her knees, clutching her chest. A neighbor, Mrs. Carter, hurried to her side, holding her shoulders. "Emily, calm down, maybe it's just a misunderstanding," she said softly, but her voice carried no certainty. Emily's tears flowed freely. She knew her husband better than anyone. He was innocent. But why would the police arrest him with such force? Why did they not even explain? Meanwhile, inside the police car, Daniel sat in silence, his wrists locked in cold handcuffs. His mind was spinning. He tried to recall anything he might have done wrong. Did he break a law unknowingly? Did someone use his name in some case? Nothing made sense. He turned to the officer sitting beside him. "Officer, please, tell me what I've done. I have a wife at home. She's worried. At least explain to me." The officer glanced at him but said nothing. Only his sharp eyes revealed something unusual, something Daniel could not understand. The car passed through busy streets, and Daniel saw people looking at him through the window. Their eyes were filled with curiosity and judgment. It felt like the whole world believed he was guilty, even though he didn't know the crime. When they reached the station, the officers pulled him out roughly. As they let him inside, Daniel noticed something strange. Another officer, standing near the entrance, whispered to his colleague, loud enough for Daniel to hear. "He looks exactly like him." Daniel froze. The words echoed in his head. Exactly like him? Like who? But before he could ask, he was pushed into a dark cell. The iron door slammed shut behind him, leaving him in silence, except for the sound of his own heartbeat. Back home, Emily sat on the floor, her eyes red from crying. She kept replaying the moment in her mind, the sudden arrest, the officers' cold faces, Daniel's helpless expression. She whispered to herself, "There has to be a reason. I'll find out. I'll prove his innocence." But deep down, fear crept into her heart. What if this was not just a mistake? What if something darker was hiding behind this arrest? The story of the perfect couple had just taken a terrifying turn. And neither Daniel nor Emily knew that this was only the beginning. The police station smelled of old files, dust, and something bitter that Daniel could not name. His wrists were sore from the tight handcuffs, and his heart was still racing. The officers who dragged him inside treated him like a criminal, though he had not even been told what his crime was. They walked him past long corridors filled with desks, ringing phones, and men in uniform. Some policemen stopped their work and stared at him. Daniel felt their eyes cutting into him like knives. They looked at him with suspicion, as if he was already guilty. Finally, the officers pushed open a heavy iron door. The sound of it creaked loudly, like a warning. Inside, one officer ordered. Daniel stepped into a dark, damp cell. The walls were rough, stained with years of neglect. A dim yellow light flickered above, casting long shadows across the floor. The smell of sweat and rust filled the air. There were 3 other men in the cell. They looked up when Daniel entered. Their eyes were hard, their faces worn from years of struggle. One of them laughed in a low, mocking voice. "Another one," he said. "What's your story, newcomer?" Daniel shook his head. "I don't know. They arrested me without telling me why." The men exchanged looks. One of them, an older man with gray stubble on his chin, leaned forward. "They don't arrest people for no reason," he muttered. "Better remember what you did." Daniel opened his mouth to protest, but his voice caught in his throat. How could he explain something he didn't even understand? He sank down on the cold bench, his mind spinning. The hours passed slowly, each minute heavier than the last. Daniel tried to stay calm, but his thoughts kept returning to Emily. Was she crying at home? Was she running from door to door, begging for answers? He closed his eyes, wishing he could hear her voice, feel her hand in his. Outside the cell, the station was noisy, phones ringing, boots echoing on the floor, doors opening and closing. But inside, time felt frozen. At one point, Daniel heard 2 officers talking outside the cell door. Their voices were low, but the silence inside the cell made their words sharp. "Are you sure it's him?" one asked. "He looks exactly like the man we've been hunting," the other replied. Daniel's blood ran cold. Exactly like the man we've been hunting? Who were they talking about? Before he could think further, the heavy door opened again. An officer stepped in and pointed at him. "You. Come with me." Daniel stood up slowly, his legs stiff from sitting on the cold bench. The other prisoners watched with curiosity as he was led out of the cell and into a small interrogation room. The room had a single table, 2 chairs, and a bright light hanging from the ceiling. The officer motioned for him to sit. Daniel obeyed, trying to control his breathing. Across the table, another officer entered, a tall man with sharp eyes. He dropped a thick file onto the table. The sound of it made Daniel jump. "Daniel Miller," the officer began, flipping open the file. "Do you know why you are here?" "No," Daniel answered softly. "I swear, I don't." The officer studied him for a long moment, then pushed a photograph across the table. Daniel's eyes widened. The man in the photograph looked just like him, the same eyes, the same hair, the same face. But the expression was different. Where Daniel's face was calm and kind, this man's face was cold, dangerous, and cruel. Daniel's hands trembled. This isn't me. Who is he?" The officer leaned closer. "This man is wanted for serious crimes, robbery, violence, even murder." And you expect me to believe that it's not you? Daniel's heart sank. He understood now. He was being mistaken for someone else. Someone dangerous. Someone who looked exactly like him. I'm innocent, Daniel whispered. You have to believe me. Ask my wife. Ask my neighbors. I've never done anything wrong in my life. The officer's eyes narrowed. He closed the file slowly. We'll see. Daniel was dragged back to the cell. His body felt weak, his spirit heavy. The other prisoners looked at him with new interest. So, you're one of those big criminals, huh? The old man with gray stubble said. You don't look like it. Daniel shook his head. I'm not. They're making a mistake. But his words felt empty, even to himself. Back at home, Emily was running from place to place. She went to the police station, but the officers refused to let her see Daniel. They told her nothing. She begged, pleaded, but their faces were cold. Finally, she stood outside the station, tears running down her face, whispering to herself, I will not give up. I will find out the truth. Inside his cell, Daniel sat quietly in the corner. His hands were clasped tightly, his eyes fixed on the floor. His mind repeated the officer's words, he looks exactly like the man we've been hunting. A storm was coming. And Daniel knew his life would never be the same again. Emily could not sleep that night. She sat by the window, staring at the empty street. The clock on the wall ticked slowly, each second heavier than the last. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her heart refused to rest. Why did they take Daniel? What crime could he ever commit? At dawn, she made a decision. If the police would not answer her, she would find someone who would. She picked up her small purse, wiped her tears, and walked out of the house with determined steps. Her first stop was the office of Mr. Johnson, a local lawyer who had once helped her father. Mr. Johnson was an elderly man, serious but kind. He was surprised to see Emily so early in the morning. Emily? What's wrong, child? You look pale. My husband, they arrested him yesterday, Emily said, her voice trembling. But he's innocent. I need your help. The lawyer sighed and gestured for her to sit. Calm down. Tell me everything from the beginning. Emily told him how Daniel was taken without explanation, how the police refused to let her see him. Her words poured out like water, fast and desperate. Mr. Johnson listened carefully, his brows furrowing deeper with every detail. Strange, he muttered finally. The police cannot arrest a man without charges. Let me check the records. He stood, walked to a tall cabinet, and pulled out a folder of recent police cases. Emily's heart pounded as he flipped through the pages. Then he stopped. His eyes narrowed. Here. This is it. He placed the folder on the table and turned it toward her. Emily leaned forward. Her breath caught in her throat. There, inside the file, was Daniel's name. His full name, Daniel Miller. Next to it, there was a photograph. Emily gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. The man in the picture, he looked exactly like her husband, but something was wrong. His eyes were darker, colder. His face carried an expression of cruelty that she had never seen on Daniel. That's not him. Emily cried. That's not my husband. Mr. Johnson studied the photo. It looks very much like him, he said slowly. Too much. Emily shook her head violently. No, no. I know Daniel. This is not him. This is someone else. The lawyer turned the pages. The file was filled with reports: robbery, assault, even murder. The man in the photo was wanted for crimes across the city. Emily's hands trembled as she touched the paper. They think Daniel is this man? It seems so, Mr. Johnson said. They believe he is the criminal. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Her heart screamed with frustration. How could the world confuse her gentle, kind husband with a monster like this? Meanwhile, back at the station, Daniel sat in the corner of his cell. He could not forget the photo the officer had shown him. It was like staring into a twisted mirror, his own face, but filled with evil. The old prisoner with gray stubble nudged him. "Why so quiet, boy? Did they tell you what you did?" Daniel looked at him with tired eyes. "They think I'm someone else. A man who looks like me." The prisoner chuckled. "Then pray they find the real one soon. Otherwise, you'll pay for his sins." Daniel lowered his head. The thought was unbearable. Later, he overheard two officers talking again near the corridor. "We finally caught him," one said. "Months of searching, and now he's sitting in that cell." The other officer hesitated. "But something feels wrong. The man we chased was violent, ruthless. This one, he seems different. Too calm." "Doesn't matter," the first replied. "The evidence is strong. Let the court decide." Their footsteps faded, but their words stayed in Daniel's mind. That evening, Emily returned to the police station with Mr. Johnson. She demanded to see her husband. At first, the officers refused, but the lawyer's sharp voice forced them to agree. Inside the visiting room, Daniel was brought out. His face lit up when he saw Emily, though his eyes were heavy with exhaustion. "Emily," he whispered. She rushed to the glass window that separated them. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Daniel, I saw the file. I know what's happening. They think you are someone else. Someone who looks like you." Daniel pressed his palm against the glass. "I told them. They won't listen." Mr. Johnson stepped forward. "Don't worry. We will fight this. If there's another man out there with your face, we'll find him. The law must see the truth." But even as he said this, a shadow of doubt passed across his face. What if the police refused to admit their mistake? What if the real criminal never appeared? Emily noticed the doubt and felt a chill run through her. She turned back to Daniel, her voice fierce with determination. "I don't care what it takes," she said. "I will prove your innocence. I won't let them destroy our life." Daniel looked at her with love and sorrow. "Be careful, Emily. Whoever that man is, he's dangerous." Emily nodded, but her heart burned with a single thought: she would not rest until the truth was revealed. Neither of them knew that the real criminal, the man who shared Daniel's face, was already watching from the shadows. The night was heavy with silence. Emily sat alone in her small living room, clutching Daniel's old jacket. His scent still lingered on the fabric, comforting her but breaking her heart at the same time. She had promised him she would fight, but deep inside, fear kept whispering, "What if I fail? What if they never believe us?" Outside, the streetlight flickered weakly. A shadow moved across the road. It stopped near her house, silent and still, watching. The figure's eyes gleamed with a coldness that could not belong to Daniel. This was Victor, the man whose face was a curse to Daniel's life. Victor lit a cigarette, the red glow revealing his cruel smile. He watched the window where Emily sat, unaware of the predator outside. "So, they think they've caught me," he muttered to himself. "Perfect. Let them keep that fool locked away while I finish what I started." He turned and disappeared into the darkness, leaving only smoke behind. The next morning, Emily visited the lawyer's office again. Mr. Johnson spread papers across the desk, his face tense. "Emily," he said, "I checked Daniel's work records. On the same day of one robbery, Daniel was repairing clocks in his shop. If we collect enough proof, the court must believe us." Emily leaned forward, her eyes shining with hope. "Then let's do it. Let's find every witness, every document. Anything to prove he wasn't there." The lawyer nodded. "But we need to be fast. The police believe they have their man. If we wait too long, Daniel could be tried as the criminal." Emily swallowed hard. She imagined Daniel behind bars for years, punished for crimes he never committed. Her heart burned with determination. She would not let that happen. Meanwhile, Victor was busy making his next move. In a hidden corner of the city, he met with two men, both rough and dangerous. "They've arrested someone else," Victor said with a laugh. "A man who looks just like me. The police think they've won." One of the men frowned. "What if they find out?" Victor's smile widened. "They won't. By the time they realize, we'll already be gone, with enough money to disappear forever." The men nodded, their eyes filled with greed. Victor leaned back, blowing smoke into the air. "That poor fool will pay the price for me. And his woman, she'll break watching him suffer." His cruel laughter filled the room. Back at the prison, Daniel sat quietly in his cell. Every hour felt longer than the last. He could not see the sun, could not feel the wind, could not hear Emily's gentle voice. Only the heavy silence of the cell surrounded him. The old prisoner spoke again. "You know, boy, I've seen this before. Innocent men locked up because they look like someone else. The law doesn't care. The law wants results." Daniel's eyes were tired. "But how long can this last? The truth has to come out." The prisoner shook his head slowly. "Sometimes, truth takes too long. And by then, it destroys lives." Daniel felt a chill. He pressed his hands together, whispering a silent prayer, "Emily, be safe. Please, find the truth before it's too late." That evening, Emily walked home with the lawyer's documents in her bag. The street was quiet, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. She quickened her pace. From the corner, a shadow moved. Victor followed her silently, his eyes fixed on her. He enjoyed the fear of his prey, even though she didn't know he was there. Emily reached her door and stepped inside quickly. She locked it, leaned against it, and sighed with relief. But outside, Victor stood in the darkness, smiling. "She's strong," he whispered to himself. "Stronger than most. But strength can be broken." Later that night, Emily dreamed of Daniel. In her dream, he was calling her name, reaching for her through iron bars. She woke up with tears on her face and a pounding heart. The clock ticked past midnight, and a cold wind blew through the half-open window. Emily got up to close it, but when she looked outside, she froze. Across the street, under the dim light, a man stood. For a moment, her heart leapt with hope. "Daniel," she whispered. But as the figure stepped forward, the hope turned into terror. The face was Daniel's, but the eyes were not. The cruel smile sent shivers through her body. She gasped and stumbled back from the window. When she looked again, the man was gone. Her hands shook as she whispered, "Oh my God, there really is someone else." The next morning, she rushed to the lawyer. Breathless, she told him what she had seen. Mr. Johnson leaned forward, his face grave. "Emily, if you saw him, that means the real criminal is still out there. This could be the proof we need. But it's also dangerous. If he knows you've seen him, he won't let you live easily." Emily straightened her shoulders. Fear trembled inside her, but she pushed it down. "I don't care. I'll face him if I must. For Daniel." Far away, Victor sat in a dark alley, sharpening a knife. His voice was cold, his smile cruel. "They think they're close to the truth," he muttered. "But the closer they get, the more dangerous it will be." The shadow of the real criminal was growing, and Daniel's life and Emily's were hanging by a thread. The city was waking up, but Emily's heart had not rested. She sat at the lawyer's desk, her hands trembling as she placed photos, receipts, and papers on the table. "Here," she said breathlessly. "These are from Daniel's workplace. He was fixing watches the same day that crime happened. His boss can confirm it. The shop records prove it too." Mr. Johnson studied the papers carefully. "This is good," he said. "Very good. If we gather more like this, the court will have no choice but to listen." Emily leaned forward, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear. "Then we have to move quickly. Daniel is sitting in that cell every day, suffering for something he never did." The lawyer nodded, but his face was serious. Emily, proving innocence is never easy. The police think they already have their man. We must find something undeniable, something they cannot ignore. At the police station, Daniel waited for any sign of hope. Days felt like months. His beard was growing, his eyes were tired, and his heart was heavy. But when the guard told him he had a visitor, he rushed to the small glass window with renewed energy. It was Emily. "Daniel," she said, her voice trembling but filled with strength. "We found proof. We're going to fight this. I saw him, Daniel. The man who looks like you, he's real. He's out there." Daniel's eyes widened. "You saw him?" Emily nodded. "He was standing outside our house. He wanted me to see him. He's dangerous, Daniel. But now we know the truth. You are not alone. We will win." Daniel pressed his palm against the glass. His voice was soft but filled with pain. "Be careful, Emily. If he's watching you, you're not safe." She pressed her hand against his. "I don't care. I'll risk anything for you." That very night, the city was shaken by breaking news. Another crime had taken place, an armed robbery at a jewelry store. Witnesses described the man clearly. Dark hair. Sharp eyes. A face that looked exactly like Daniel Miller. But Daniel was locked inside a cell at that very moment. The news spread like fire. People began whispering in confusion. How could a man commit a crime when he was already in jail? At the station, the officers were stunned. Some looked at Daniel with disbelief. One finally muttered, "If he's here, then who was out there?" Emily rushed to the lawyer's office with the newspaper in her hands. She slammed it on the desk. Look! Look at this! Another crime, while Daniel is in prison. They cannot deny it anymore." Mr. Johnson read the report and nodded firmly. "This is the break we needed. The police cannot close their eyes now. We'll demand Daniel's release." Emily's heart lifted for the first time in days. She felt victory was close. But outside the office, a pair of cold eyes watched her from the shadows. "Victor!" He had followed her again. His jaw tightened as he read the headlines from a distance. "They're getting too close," he whispered. "This woman, she's ruining everything." That evening, Emily walked home with the paper clutched in her hand. The streets were quiet, but her steps were quick. She felt someone following her but refused to look back. Fear crawled up her spine, but she whispered to herself, "Stay strong. For Daniel." Suddenly, a hand grabbed her arm and pulled her into a dark alley. Emily gasped. The man's face was inches from hers. The same face she had loved for years, but twisted, cruel, and terrifying. "Victor!" "Hello, pretty wife," he sneered, his grip tightening. "I hear you've been busy, trying to free your husband." Emily's voice shook. "Why are you doing this? Why are you ruining his life?" Victor leaned closer, his eyes burning with hatred. "Because his life is the perfect cover for mine. As long as he's in that cell, I'm free. But you," he paused, pressing a knife against her side. "You're becoming a problem." Emily's heart pounded, but she lifted her chin bravely. "You can scare me. You can hurt me. But you will never break me. I will prove the truth." Victor's cruel smile faded for a moment. Her courage surprised him. He released her roughly and stepped back. "You're braver than I thought," he muttered. "But bravery won't save him." With that, he disappeared into the darkness, leaving Emily shaken but alive. The next morning, Emily told Mr. Johnson about the attack. His face went pale. "Emily, this is worse than I imagined. Victor knows we're close. He won't stop until he silences you. We must act fast, before he does something unforgivable." At the station, the police finally admitted their mistake. The robbery proved Daniel could not be the criminal. But they were still hesitant. One officer muttered, "If we release him now and we're wrong, the city will blame us." Emily slammed her hand on the table. "He is innocent. While you sit here in doubt, the real criminal is free, planning his next crime." Her voice was filled with fire. For the first time, the officers looked ashamed. Far away, Victor planned his next move. He stared at a map on the table, marking places with red circles. His voice was low, but deadly. "They think they can stop me with papers and courts," he said. "They don't understand. By the time they find me, it will already be too late." His knife scraped across the map, cutting through the streets. A storm was coming. Emily was closer than ever to proving Daniel's innocence, but Victor was closer than ever to destroying everything. The air in the courtroom was heavy with tension. Emily sat in the front row, her hands gripping the edge of her chair. Beside her, Mr. Johnson arranged the files, photographs, and news articles that proved Daniel's innocence. Daniel himself sat at the defendant's table, his wrists free of handcuffs for the first time in weeks. His eyes searched for Emily, and when they met hers, a flicker of hope returned to his tired face. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The case began. The prosecutor read the charges: robbery, assault, murder. Each word stabbed into Emily's heart, because each word described not Daniel, but the monster who wore his face. Then it was Mr. Johnson's turn. He stood, his voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, this man is innocent. He has been mistaken for another. On the day of the crime, he was at work. We have receipts, witnesses, and even his employer ready to testify." The judge listened, his eyes sharp. "But the police claim he matches the criminal's description exactly," he said. Mr. Johnson nodded. "Yes. That is because the real criminal looks just like him. But evidence will show they are not the same man." Emily's heart beat faster. This was their chance. While the court argued, in another part of the city, Victor prepared for his next crime. He did not care about the trial. To him, it was a game. The police had their Daniel, and he was free to do as he pleased. But Victor underestimated Emily's strength. That evening, after the first hearing, Emily insisted on helping the police set a trap. "If he's still free, he will strike again," she told them. "And when he does, you'll see the truth with your own eyes." Reluctantly, the police agreed. They had little choice, the last robbery had already embarrassed them. If they failed again, the whole city would lose faith in them. The trap was set. Jewelry stores were watched, banks were guarded, and plainclothes officers filled the streets. Emily was asked to stay home, but she refused. She wanted to be there. She wanted to see the face of the man who had stolen her husband's freedom. Hours passed. Nothing happened. Some officers began to lose patience. But Emily stood firm. Her instincts told her he would come. And then, screams echoed from a street corner. A masked man stormed out of a store, a bag of money in his hand, a gun in the other. The mask slipped for a second, and the world saw his face. Daniel's face. But it wasn't Daniel. It was Victor. The chase began. Police ran after him through the crowded streets. Emily's breath caught in her chest as she saw him. It was the same face she loved, but twisted with cruelty. Her heart ached, but her will hardened. Now everyone will know the truth. Victor ran fast, his eyes wild, his gun flashing in the night. But the streets were surrounded. The police had prepared too well. He turned a corner and found himself trapped. "Drop the weapon," an officer shouted. Victor laughed coldly. "You think you can catch me? You think you can chain me like that fool you locked away?" Emily pushed through the crowd, her voice breaking. "You ruined his life. You almost destroyed us. But tonight, it ends." Victor's eyes met hers. For a moment, he froze. There was no fear in her eyes, only fire. The police moved in. Shots rang out, not to kill, but to disable. Victor fell to the ground, his weapon clattering away. Handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. The truth was finally visible to everyone. Two men with the same face, but only one was guilty. Back in the courtroom, the news of Victor's capture changed everything. The prosecutor dropped the case. The judge looked at Daniel with a heavy sigh. "Mr. Miller," he said, "you are free to go. The law made a mistake, but today, justice has spoken." Tears filled Emily's eyes as Daniel walked out, free at last. She ran into his arms, holding him tightly as if she would never let go again. Daniel buried his face in her hair, whispering, "I knew you'd save me. I knew you'd never give up." Around them, people watched in silence, some ashamed, some relieved. The perfect couple was together again, stronger than ever. That night, Daniel and Emily sat together at their small kitchen table. No riches, no jewels, only the comfort of being side by side again. Emily held his hand, her eyes soft but strong. "I told you," she whispered, "I would prove the truth." Daniel kissed her forehead gently. "And you did. You saved me." For a long moment, they sat in silence, listening to the ticking of the clock he had once repaired. The sound was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. Outside, the city carried on, but inside their little home, love had won. And though the shadow of Victor would always remain in memory, the light of truth had broken through.